People who escaped poverty. What was your biggest culture shock? Actually buying things, if that sounds weird. I'm so used to saving and not having that I forget that I can afford a new pair of glasses if I break my old ones. After being in a position or poverty, you learn to deal with stuff that most people would view as inconvenient. I've been teased on a few occasions because I'll go without stuff even though I can get things for myself now that I'm an adult. Before we had a computer and the school teacher requires us to submit a paper, my classmates would hand in their papers printed out. As for me, I would have to write down the paper, but because I have poor handwriting, I will ask my older sister to handwrite my paper neatly. And the first time we bought a computer, which came with a free printer, I was really excited to make school assignments. It was overwhelming, really, to know that you can write your paper on a keyboard, format it, and then print it. And then there's word art. Even if it was not encouraged, I typed the titles of my papers in word art. My friends thought it was funny, but I didn't care. It's word art. Oh my God, I have never before seen such enthusiasm for word art. You just melted my icy heart. Now my lentils are gonna get watery. Edit, fuck, I can't English good. Let's assume my dinner is in my lap, and my ice queen heart is melting down into them. I am still so touched at all of you who love word art. The way people talk, just hearing people talk about things like drinking green tea and how they bought new kitchen countertops this weekend and casually dropping shit like that time I was in Thailand seemed silly, but at first it was weird hearing people talk like the people on TV. I also realized I have an absolutely filthy mouth. I didn't realize the way I talked was so bad, but am by far the most inappropriate person in my workplace. People sending their kids to summer camps and paying for music lessons, sports lessons, private tutoring, etc. I never had music lessons growing up because we couldn't afford it, never learned how to swim, never went to summer camp, never did anything interesting. Now my kids have all those things, and it just seems like they're so privileged to have those opportunities to learn so much cool stuff and have so many great experiences. That other kids ate regularly, needed to bathe, and come home each night. The other families in my neighborhood were all in the same boat, moving all the time, new neighbors continuously, rent late, no power, etc. I lucked out. My dad saved up for a private investigator, got custody of his 3 kids, 7, 9, 11, and suddenly we had to go to school, wear real clothes, i.e. not just a dirty shirt, no shoes. We had dinner together. It was a change I'll never forget. A sad story I learned through chance. Almost 10 years after the worst of it, I met a stranger who would bathe me, feed me, and dress me in her son's clothes. I'm female. When I was 6. Awkward. I open the door. She's my boyfriend's friend's mom. No recollection of her on my part, and she starts bawling. Running to fire. Is that you? I would dress you, send you out into the world again, feed you. I always hoped you'd make it. My family was quite poor when I was a young child. We were never homeless, but we did sometimes skip a meal or two, or maybe live without electricity or running water for a while. I got used to that lifestyle, and I took care of the things I had, and I learned to repair things that were broken. I joined the military after high school, and I couldn't believe all of the people my age who would waste food or throw things away that weren't even broken. I also found it quite amusing when the barracks had no hot water, heat, etc. Many people lost their minds. I'm in my 40s, so this dates me a little. My mother always switched price tags when we shopped. This was before barcode scanning. I thought it was normal and did it myself until I found out it was illegal while in my early teens. Also, a huge culture shock was how wasteful the world can be. We used everything until it was absolutely useless. And throwing food away was a sin. I still eat every bite of food on my plate. If I serve myself, I will only put on my plate what I can finish. If I eat at a restaurant, I will eat everything or take home leftovers. I can't waste food. Clothes. The fact that people actually spend hundreds of dollars on clothes. For one shirt, they're willing to shell out $80, which is the monetary equivalent of 8 meals at McDonald's or 2 weeks worth of groceries. Side note, when I was younger, we'd go to thrift shops to buy clothes. Once 2008 to 2009 came around, it was suddenly cool to buy clothes at thrift shops. I'm guessing it still is? It kind of upset me once I realized it was finally cool to buy hand-me-downs because back then, I'd lie to other kids my age when they'd ask what store I got my clothes from because I was so ashamed that they were from the Goodwill. I've never had the luxury of buying a shirt for $80, and I'll never spend that money on a shirt even if I had all the money in the world. It's such an extravagance. I grew up middle class, and I can't even justify spending $80 on a shirt. I feel guilty when I buy a single $16 dress at Target. There hasn't been much of a culture shock as it's been a slow, steady climb up. I've had plenty of time to acclimate. It's more like a series of pleasant surprises for me. Doing things that cost a lot up front yet save money in the long run is a cool feeling. Like a trip to Costco, for example. I can buy $200 worth of chicken, veggies, etc. instead of just eating the dollar menu at MCD's every day. Being able to afford an XB1 and have furniture that matches is a fun perk too. I can just buy a video game whenever I want, and I can have fast food whenever I want. I can wear clothes that fit me. I can just do things because I want to do them. I have no idea why it was such a foreign concept to me. I guess I never realized that it was even possible. Blew my mind one day when my buddy was like, hey, let's go watch a movie in X city. And I could actually say, yeah, let's do that. Like just drive 20 minutes on a whim, get dinner, watch a movie. Biggest shock of growing up for me, honestly. So, I'm not never work again wealthy, but I do well. I'm one of 7 kids, and we were pretty poor. Not fear for your life, poor, but poor with a certain social safety net, American poor. I since got a good degree without debt, have a stable job, married a financially stable dude, and am in no debt. To the world, that's pretty rich. Anyway, the biggest thing for me is social legitimacy. When you have a little bit of money, you can do things that you couldn't before. Knowing that you have a safety net makes you more ballsy and confident, and less at people's mercy. Things like buying a new top for an interview are huge. The other thing you can do when you're well off is plan ahead, save, make better financial decisions. Between those two things, I truly understand now the privileges that I have. In poverty, the definition of rich is anyone not completely poor. Your parents' car is not 15 years old? The paint is actually glossy and not peeled and matte? None of your utilities are off. You are rich. That's how it was when I grew up. You call so many people rich when truly they are not and have problems of their own. Wow, a question I can answer. My biggest shock has been watching people who grew up with financial stability talk to their kids about money. Money for me as a kid was something to cause anxiety. We never had enough. Not enough to eat, not enough to pay bills, not enough to, well, live really. When I see my friends with their kids now, we all make more than a decent living. Their relationship with money is so strategic and thoughtful. How am I going to make the most out of what I have? How to show my kids how to come out ahead and make good financial choices. These were not the lessons I learned. Mine were based around collecting things for safety. If I can afford this now, or even if I can't, can I get it now and I could sell it if something goes wrong? I still find myself fighting the urge to buy my kids everything because I could. Not literally, of course, but it doesn't even matter to them. I realize I'm not buying them stuff. I'm buying stuff for a little anxious me. Hesitant face. Having a fridge and pantry full of food that I like never gets old. Growing up, there was not much to eat, and it was mostly crap. It's been at least a decade since I lived like that, but I still open up my pantry and marvel at all the treats and options. There's really nothing like being well-nourished. That places like Red Lobster and Outback Steakhouse aren't places you dress up to go to. I was out on a date with the guy who would eventually be my husband. We were starting to get hungry, and he suggested grabbing food and brought up Red Lobster. I told him I wasn't sure. I wasn't dressed good enough for it. He sort of boggled at me and said I was fine. I went in and was so self-conscious until I saw that there were guys eating there that looked like they walked straight off a construction site. I'm still getting used to being okay buying stuff for myself, especially frivolities like clothes and makeup. I used to like to go to the mall to window shop. It still irritates my husband when I see something I like, go up to it, say something like, hey, they have this in my size. And wow, the price is really reasonable. I would love to wear this at insert event or place here. Then turn and walk away. It seems to be a struggle for him to convince me that I can in fact buy clothes that cost more than $15. Introducing yourself with your first and last name. This to me above all else is the most uncomfortable part of high society. Your last name is so incredibly important to how you will be treated. A last name like mine only brings a condescending smile, a polite and painful bout of small talk, and ultimately being forgotten. Your last name becomes a pedigree and a bank statement that everyone can read. Honestly, this sounds like more of a small town kind of thing. Once you're in a bigger place, last names mean nothing unless they match a landmark or famous person. What shocked me, and continues to shock me, is how little interest the people around me have in wanting to help others. When I was poor, the family friends were always helping each other, and when we had any extra money, we'd buy new school supplies for the poor kid across the street. Our neighbors donated food and clothes to the church drives. Now I'm surrounded by people with lots of disposable income, and they just go out to nice restaurants every day and buy all the new tech gadgets. None of my coworkers donate to anything or volunteer for anything. It's crazy to see all this money and no desire to help anyone. I guess since they were never in need themselves, they can't picture what just donating $100 worth of toiletry supplies to the local women's shelter can do for people, or what donating toys regularly to the refugee center can do for those kids who have nothing. My grandmother, who was a millionaire now, had an awful childhood. Her father ran off with her when she was a baby, and when he got remarried, he eventually ran off with my 13-year-old grandma again and left her at this motel room. She had her first period during this and only had access to one maxi pad. To this day, she still is so embarrassed to think of who found it in her motel room drawer tucked away in Kleenex for the next time she possibly needed it. I'm sort of moving into the process. I'm about to marry a guy whose family had it well off. They both work in the medical field, take 2-week vacations every year, sometimes more than once. They have season tickets to games, kids got new cars at 16, my fiancé and his sister Big have college paid for by the parents. They're not rich snobs, but sometimes I notice little things. I grew up where we learned to shop efficiently, bought cheap things, had parents excited to have jobs with insurance, moved probably 10+ times. We were never bottom of the barrel, but I could always tell that we were different. So getting into this family, going shopping with the future mother-in-law, we were buying hot dogs, cheap food, and I picked up the dollar ones, and she and my sister-in-law were like, "Why would you grab those?" And made me put them away so they could grab the $5 pack. It's not much, but it does make me realize we have a very different state of mind on things. This thread makes me feel like an ungrateful prick. I mean, damn, we weren't rich, but I never even came close to being hungry. I wasn't sporting $80 Lacoste polos, but I sure as hell wasn't wearing socks with holes in them, and if I ever needed anything, I got it promptly. So many cute childhood memories, bike rides with my mom, eating freeze pops with friends in the summer. That wouldn't have happened if my parents couldn't afford to feed me. Damn. The first year we were dating, I bought my husband something I thought was a small birthday gift. He had been talking about trying to make more food at home, but he was strapped for time. I bought him a crock pot, a basic one with no fancy features. I didn't want to do something big because we had only been dating a few months. He cried. Not full-on sobs, but very teary. He just turned 25, and no one had ever bought him a birthday present. I was 22 and had led a very sheltered life. It never crossed my mind that this was so out of the ordinary for him. That conversation just broke my heart. Even now, when I think about it, I just want to give him a hug and bake him a cake. Saving. And holidays. I'm sure as hell not wealthy. I'm on minimum wage, in fact, but grew up in some pretty horrific conditions for a portion of my childhood. The one thing that sticks out to me as all kinds of insane once I finished uni was, I can save. And within a few years, I've become in a position where this month, I will be paying off the last of my debts, all bar my student loan, which I don't count as a personal debt. I can be debt-free, just like that. And I can save and go on a holiday. I never went on one until I was 23. I'm nearly 25 now, and I've been on 2 holidays, and it's freaking magical. The whole experience, even waiting for hours in an airport. I can go on a plane and see the tops of mountains. I can go in a sea that's warm. I can see a sandy beach. I can hear other languages in their native countries. The excitement is almost too much from the moment I even begin to think about a holiday. People actually caring. I've started branching away from my moneyless, crazy, abusive family, and I've been on my own for 17 years. And when my friend Matt told me, "I got your back," it changed so much for me that maybe humanity might not be as big of a monstrous pile of garbage as I thought. I'm a conical man, but nothing like I was growing up with nothing or no one. The good thing it did for me was teach me coherent thought at an early age because all I had were my thoughts. Older teens who don't appreciate school. Excuse me? Your family is spending what amount of money for your private high school, and you don't do your goddamn work? I went to a school in Vietnam that had holes in the ground for toilets. Kids wore face masks so that they didn't inhale the huge amounts of mosquitoes. School was from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. every day. Many kids went directly to work after class, and every single one of those kids worked there, but's off because they genuinely wanted to learn in order to better their lives. Biggest culture shock to this day. How in debt a lot of upper middle class people are. I work my way up, have a great job, and I still think, how the fuck can they afford that? I know I make more than they do, and I can't afford trips to Hawaii and a new Cadillac. Then I realized all of that shit goes in credit cards. Or, how much the well-to-do get a hand up from their parents. Even if it's just connection, or getting your first car, or going to good schools. I had to work for all of that from scratch. Please consider subscribing if you enjoyed. Love.